Straight Shooting News. Tonight, we're doing a special. I'm your host, Bandana Red. Our special is going to be Distractions and Concerns. Coming to you from the Merrimack Valley, where the shot heard around the world was fired, which changed the way men would be ruled, or not ruled, by kings, queens, czars, emperors, tyrants. How's that? What we're seeing today. Here we fly our Betsy Roth's flags proudly, part of our heritage, no matter what the FBI and I consider them to be. Saying that, we're going to come to you tonight because a lot of talking heads in the media, sound a lot of hopium, not giving you much background in history on what is actually taking place. And we're going to talk about the document. This has been a big subject for a couple of weeks. It's been in all our shows. And I want to give you a little historic background. We're going to be looking back to understand what's taking place today and what will be taking place in the interview with Christopher Wray. I'm going to show you some reasons why he may be holding back that document and cannot give it to Congress. We have a problem in government. So we don't want you to take a roller coaster ride with your emotions. And stay hopeful and be positive. It's going to work out. But let's take a look at what we got here. Tonight's going to be used under the fair use laws. Let's roll that.
Guo, the guy who founded the new federal state of China, gets arrested shortly after saying he'll come clean and name people inside the CIA and the FBI. Well, Christopher Wray, there's indications from your organization that he may be compromised. He was Miles Guo's lawyer early on, and then what happened with that?
Christopher Wray, he was a partner with a big law firm, King & Spalding. This is a big law firm, and they do a lot of business with the communist China. Christopher spent 12 years working for King & Spalding before he was named as the FBI director in 2017. According to the law.com, there's an investigative reporting showing Christopher Wray received $14 million from King & Spalding since 2016. He was Mr. Miles Guo's lawyer before he was lured by the CCP. The CCP's vice chairman, Wang Qishan, has a global conglomerate called HNA, and this is the company that has been, purchasing a lot of international hotels, airlines, and properties, including Hilton and Park Avenue office building and Deutsche Bank. This is a really CCP's global expansion. So King & Spalding, where Christopher Wray was a partner, they accepted a multi-billion-dollar contract from the CCP kleptocrats Wang Qishan to represent HNA globally. And that's why he discontinued the service with Mr. Miles Guo.
Wanted to hit briefly what's going on up in the military bases in Alaska, since I was a commander up there for Ford. I was the longest serving commander in Alaska, and I think still to this day. The Chinese, just yesterday, had a number of spies up there that were caught trying to go into Fort Wainwright and the bases up there, which are so important to us, and particularly with the Arctic campaign building and what's going on. What the Biden administration did on the day they came in office, they gave up our energy independence. They opened borders. We've had now 5+ million people come in with ground force actions, I believe, in our missile fields and our bomber bases that could take out 2 legs of our triad with ground forces here. And we have fentanyl losing Americans at 109,000 people a year, which is the rate that we lost killed in action in World War II at the height of per year in World War II. The death rate is unbelievable, all fitting into what? Unrestricted warfare, which was how the Chinese laid out in 2005 a doctrine that they promulgated then of gaining global dominance.
More than 100,000 people. That's how many people are missing in Mexico. Many of those are considered disappeared, meaning they went missing without a trace. No body, no evidence, likely victims of cartel violence. Mexico's president said he would support a peace agreement among cartel leaders in hopes of stopping the violence. News Nation's Evan Lambert. And Evan, Mexican President Obrador campaigned on a non-confrontational way of dealing with the cartels, promising hugs, not bullets. It hasn't worked to curb any of the violence. What's his latest idea?
Elizabeth, it's significant, his idea, because it's a pretty strong admission that what he's done so far just isn't working.
House Oversight Committee, Issa said today that he's prepared to hold a contempt of Congress vote against Attorney General Eric Holder. Mr. Issa wants the Justice Department to turn over documents related to the Fast and Furious gun-running operation. The two men met at the Capitol this evening, but they failed to come up with an agreement on the documents. After the meeting, Mr. Issa spoke with reporters.
Two notes I wanted to make public. Today, FBI officials confirmed that the unclassified FBI-generated record has not been disproven and is currently being used in an ongoing investigation. The confidential human source who provided information about then Vice President Biden being involved in a criminal bribery scheme is a trusted, highly credible informant who has been used by the FBI for over 10 years and has been paid over six figures. These are facts and no amount of spin and frankly lies from the White House or congressional Democrats can change this information. At the briefing, the FBI again refused to hand over the unclassified record to the custody of the House Oversight Committee, and we will now initiate contempt of Congress hearings this Thursday.
We've had about a 20-minute meeting with the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. To summarize, he came with an offer of a briefing. We went through the process of what was being offered and responded, as I think we have to, which is that the documents that they may choose to give in the future, we need to have before tomorrow. Ultimately, the documents necessary to cause the postponement appear to be in their possession. We're hoping that we have them tonight. If we can evaluate them even partially, then that will give us grounds to negotiate a postponement and perhaps a final resolution.
Don't get confused. We're going to unwind that for you. Because it's important when you can see what's going to take place. Congress holds Christopher Wray, Director of the FBI, in contempt. Keep in mind, I'm going to give you these segments from a longer show that laid it out all prior to it, but it's something that we needed to get on the record tonight so you can understand what is taking place. So what we saw there was we saw connections. We saw that Wray, with a Chinese company, what did he do? He pocketed $14 million in his pocket. And he was doing contracts with a Chinese company when he was with a law firm. It was worth billions. Now, keep in mind, all Chinese companies are under the control of the Chinese military. And we gave you General McCurney. He started talking about, he was the head of the Alaska Command for the U.S. and what was happening up north. It's a form of warfare. We're trying to make a point to people. This wasn't just some people sitting in these woods all over Canada and the U.S. who didn't put out their forest fire like Smokey the Bear would tell them to. We gave you a little bit of what's happening in Mexico. The president of Mexico wants to make a peace treaty with the drug cartels. Think about that for a minute. That means he is not in control of his country. Cartels are in control of Mexico. The cartels are being fed the drugs and everything else that's coming in over our border to kill more people in World War II. The general told you that. A little bit of the old Fast and Furious. When Attorney General Eric Holder was supervisor of flooded weapons to the Mexican drug cartel. And we saw Daryl Issa, who at that time was in charge of the same review committee, tried to hold him accountable. And what was he have to do? He was going to hold him in contempt. So keep that in mind as you see things unfold. Now I want you to listen to another segment here. And then we're going to let Gigi explain something to you, and then we're going to go to the withholding. Go ahead.
But the CIA was created originally after they got rid of the OSS during the war, the Office of Strategic Services, which was an intel branch. And Truman was absolutely against it at every turn. He said, it's an American Gestapo, no way. But he's talked into it. Group in there that is around at the same time, and they're called the Office of Policy Coordination, OPC. And they go into this pose. So they think that they have a blank check to do anything that they want. And this OPC becomes so radical and starts doing all these covert operations. What happens is that branch of the OPC inside of the intelligence community, instead of being taken under control by the Central Intelligence Agency, they take over. They're already thinking in this lawless fashion. The other thing that needs to be understood is that even though it's set up initially under the idea of some kind of military protocol and feeding intelligence back to the president, what happens is it's set up in a New York law firm that deals with international finance, Sullivan and Cromwell. This is the pipeline of international finance directly through, high finance, Wall Street, New York, comes a weird piece of all of this military intelligence gathering. Suddenly it has a purpose which crisscrosses with the Wall Street interests and the international finance around this law firm there. And what happens is through that power of the government, and one of the things that happens in the background there is part of the CIA ledger in the background is that, they're given this mandate that no matter what they do, they can't be prosecuted. This is also completely extra-constitutional. It was never envisioned by the Founding Fathers, and it was only thought of as a way to deal with extraordinary circumstances.
Good afternoon. Today's vote is the regrettable culmination of what became a misguided and politically motivated investigation during an election year. By advancing it over the past year and a half, Congressman Issa and others have focused on politics over public safety. Instead of trying to correct the problems that led to a series of flawed law enforcement operations, and instead of helping us find ways to better protect the brave law enforcement agents like Agent Brian Terry, who keep us safe, they have led us to this unnecessary and unwarranted outcome. When concerns about Operation Fast and Furious first came to light, I took action and ordered an independent investigation into what happened. We learned that the flawed tactics used in this operation began in a previous administration, but I made sure that they ended in this one. I also made sure that agents and prosecutors across the country knew that such tactics must never be used again. I put in place new policies, new safeguards, and new leadership to make certain of this, and took extraordinary steps to facilitate robust congressional oversight. Now, let me be very clear. That was my response to Operation Fast and Furious, and any suggestion to the contrary is simply not consistent with the facts. I had hoped that congressional leaders would be good faith partners in this work, and some were. Others, however, have devoted their time and their attention to making reckless charges, unsupported by fact, and to advancing truly absurd conspiracy theories. I refuse to be deterred from it, and I will not let election year politics and gamesmanship stand in the way of continued progress.
There you go. There's that favorite term. conspiracy theories. They're all conspiracy theories. Eric Holder was up to nothing, but let's go back to the beginning. Did the DJ, the doc journalist, make the connection for you to law firms, international corporations? That should connect to why the money that Wray received, he was with the law firm, compromises him, from even serving in his position. Then we went back to Eric Holder. Eric Holder, he's a partner of Perkins and Coie, a law firm. They're all working with the federal government. Keep in mind, the CIA controls all the other agencies. The FBI, they may argue a little bit between each other, but the one with the most control is the CIA. You got to remember at 9/11, when they for the Department of Homeland Security, and they turned around and they said this is all for our protection, and so that the agencies could coordinate better, so we wouldn't get attacked again. Seriously, you're seeing the results of it now. The FISA courts, Section 702. You're seeing the abuse when you allow government to have this type of power. We're going to roll into another segment there. And what I want you to do in this segment is to listen to everything that's being said, try to remember it, and then compare it to what you're going to hear from Wray, all the talking heads, and the committees after they hold Wray into contempt.
They have used the power that they have gotten for all the wrong things. They want to keep themselves in power. They want to cater to the special interests. It is time for us as Democrats to be as tough as they are, to be as dedicated as they are, to be as committed as they are. Michelle always says, Michelle Obama, I love her, you know, she and my wife like really tight, which always scares me and Barack. But Michelle always says that, you know, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them. That's what this new Democratic Party is about. We're proud as hell to be Democrats. We're willing to fight for the ideals of the Democratic Party. We're proud of our history. We're proud of our present, and we're proud of the future that we can create for this country. And we're not in this just to make a statement. We're in this to win.
House.
And that was House Oversight Chairman Darrell Issa calling the contempt vote on Attorney General Eric Holder. And the White House yesterday invoked executive privilege to prevent release of certain Judiciary Department documents on Fast and Furious. And that's citing executive privilege for the first time, refused to turn over documents pertaining to a botched gun trafficking operation. The party line vote at a marathon session of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee intensified a feud between the Obama administration and Republican lawmakers and dealt an embarrassing blow to the nation's highest-ranking law enforcement official. House leaders said they will schedule a vote of the entire chamber on the matter next week unless the Attorney General turns over certain documents on Operation Fast and Furious. If the full House votes to find Holder in contempt, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, who is employed by the Justice Department, will have to decide whether to criminally prosecute him. Sari Horwitz and Ed O'Keefe have the lead story. Ed O'Keefe of the Washington Post joins us by phone. Mr. O'Keefe, how significant was yesterday's vote in the House Oversight Committee?
Well, it's significant for several reasons. Among others, this is the first Obama cabinet secretary to face this kind of confrontation with the House since President Obama took office, and really the first administration official to go through this. Also significant because he's one of only a handful of attorneys general to ever face a contempt charge from Congress, so they're usually the ones that get it most often among cabinet secretaries. And it's significant because if indeed they go through with this vote next week, it would really be the first time, I think, in almost 2 decades that the full House has voted on a contempt charge against any administration official. So it's a very big deal, and certainly for the Justice Department. Democrats continue to write this off as just partisan maneuvering. Republicans say this is a serious attempt to figure out what has been going on at the Justice Department, who knew what when, and how seriously did they take this situation. And we'll see how it plays out in the coming days.
Straight party line vote, correct?
It was. I believe it was 23-17. It was after about almost 6 hours of conversation between the two sides. It's rare that that Chairman Issa allows virtually every member of the committee to speak, but on this one, I think he understood, given the attention it was receiving and given the severity or the importance of this vote, that he allowed every member that wanted to talk about this, and virtually all of them did have something to say. And the Democratic side that basically would have pointed out that they could have waited now that the president had invoked executive privilege, and then on the Republican side, one that sort of reflected the fact that at the last hour the president had invoked executive privilege.
Ed O'Keefe, what are the politics of this?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, but I think for the most part that this is seen certainly by the White House as a complete partisan witch hunt in an election year. And the White House put out a really strong statement from its communications director, Dan Pfeiffer, who said, look, in an era when the economy should be the chief focus and Congress should be working to help create jobs for the American people, here they are as a stated part of their 2012 goal, launching partisan oversight investigations of the administration. And he said just about everything he can do to help the committee. So he turns around and says, no, you're stonewalling. You're trying to hide something, and we don't know what it is. And you're the ones being partisan because you don't want to embarrass the president in an election year. So it breaks down about familiar partisan lines. And, I think we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out. But certainly it could intensify in the next week if the full House goes through with this contempt vote.
What would prevent the full House from going through with a contempt vote at this point?
Well, if you talk to Darrell Issa, you talk to other Republican aides, they say, look, if the Attorney General hands over everything we're looking for, which includes, more documents about why it is that they misled us into believing that the Justice Department didn't know everything they did, if he agrees to, reform the process of looking at these types of investigations and apologizes and make sure that they, properly treat the whistleblowers who came forward to the committee, then we'll drop that. Well, the White House, the Justice Department will probably turn around in the next few hours and say, look, those are impossible things. And we've been more than forthcoming. He's asking for everything and beyond, and we just simply can't do that. We've never done it. It would be an extraordinary request. And so, we'll see. Democrats made it very clear yesterday that if John Boehner goes through with his vote, he will be cast as one of the most extremely partisan speakers in U.S. history, because not even Newt Gingrich in the 1990s brought contempt charges against Janet Reno up for a full vote in the House. But Nancy Pelosi brought up some contempt charges against Bush administration officials during her tenure. So it's happened, but never really before for a cabinet secretary, and never in something so narrow, even if it is important, certainly to some people, such a narrow situation as this Fast and Furious investigation is.
Ed O'Keefe, would the Senate have any role in this?
The Senate, in a sense, started all this, because it was Chuck Grassley, the Republican of Iowa, who's the ranking member on the Senate Judiciary Committee, who was the first to really raise questions about this. But because he lacks the subpoena power and really the majority backing, he couldn't compel the Justice Department and the White House to answer his questions. So he went across the Capitol to his colleague Darrell Issa and said, look, you've got subpoena power. Could you take this up? And since then, Issa's really ran with it. And Grassley's been by his side. He was at the meetings the other day with the Attorney General where they tried to cut a deal that would have staved off this contempt vote. And certainly they'll be asked about it. But if the House votes on this, we would get referred directly to the U.S. District, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and the Senate essentially stays out of it. But he's the guy currently who is investigating several other sensitive matters here in the district, and he is a Democratic appointee. He was an Obama supporter. And, among others, Eleanor Holmes Norton yesterday, the district's non-voting representative in Congress, pointed out, look, go ahead, refer this to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. He's unlikely to take it up, because if you look at history, You know, when the roles were reversed and it was a Democratic Congress referring Republican administration officials to a Republican U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, he also declined to take the case, citing the partisanship. Let's see if the current U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia does the same thing. And she suspected that he would.
Did you hear enough? Is that interesting? You look at what's taking place today. All these people representing, this is checks and balances. Checks and balances. Now, let's take a look at what was said. Holder. He was accusing the GOP at that time of wanting to remain in power. Him and, his buddy Barack. The transforming guy. To transform America into what is the question? See, what's involved in all this goes back a lot deeper than anybody thinks. Now, Obama used executive privilege. Did you notice that? But when Trump did it, did you hear all the talking heads in the media? They're all screaming. He used executive privilege. He's hiding something. What was Obama holder and that whole administration hiding? Fast and Furious, the guns went to the cartels in Mexico. Those are the same cartels invading our border today, siding with communist China. See all the connections. What is in that document? What is Comer trying to get his hands on? And keep this in mind too. That J6 committee, when Trump actually used executive privilege, it was an illegitimate committee. So let's have so many Republicans, so many Democrats. Pelosi turned around and threw the Republicans that were supposed to be on that committee out. They couldn't even have a fair committee. And now we've seen, we'll show you in the upcoming segment, when we do the full show, what they did to drop their evidence. If you haven't seen it already. And another similarity you got there is you got Grassley in the Senate. You had to go to Daryl Issa to get the investigation going because the Democrats were in control of the Senate. It's like it just repeat itself over and over. Why Newt Gingrich didn't go after Janet Reno in the 1990s after she slaughtered innocent Americans? But Pelosi, she went right after. See, the Democrats, they're about to win. Holding what's going on. And they're trying to get people down and kick them. It's not just the GOP, they're kicking. They're kicking we the people. We the people, our whole system of government is in jeopardy. Let's break this up and let's go into another part we have for you that we think is important to get out tonight.